You're alive.
The right people matter.
Thank you. Good evening. Welcome. This is a regularly scheduled city council workshop. Today is Monday, November 25th, 2024, and it is 5:15 p.m. Around the table, we have Councilor Leonard, Councilor Beck, Councilor Trumbull, Councilor Mallor, Councilor Paz, Councilor Fish, Councilor Dean, Councilor Fournier, and myself, Council Chair Pelletier. Our first item on the agenda is the ARPA workshop. I believe our city manager should be joining remotely.
Yes.
One moment, please.
Yeah, we get attendees.
Yeah, maybe. There she is. Right.
Apologies, but I don't think anybody wants the gift that I somehow wound up with this weekend.
Is there any way to adjust your video?
Uh,
No, I think that's perfectly normal.
He's feeling a little sideways.
Need the V8.
oh, okay. Hang on. How's that?
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
I tried this a couple of ways, and from my laptop, all you would see is my empty office. So that didn't work. So tonight I wanted to go ahead and get started with an ARPA update. I think the first item under tonight's event was just try to give some background, because I know we have a number of counselors who were not part of the ARPA allocation process. So for background purposes, the city was allocated just under $20.5 million in state and local fiscal recovery funds. Intended the funding was to provide the resources to respond to the pandemic, its economic effects, and to build a stronger, more equitable economy during the recovery. So what this is, we launched a pretty aggressive and open public application process, offering the opportunity for groups to submit applications for funding that met the priorities that aligned with the city council's priorities, specifically childcare, homelessness, housing, job training, mental health.
No, lost you. Yeah.
I think I'm back. I don't know if I went away or you all went away, but
Seems like
the
maybe
application.
your connection is not that great. Maybe you could try turning off your camera and see if that helps.
Okay, I can try
audio-
that.
Garbled.
All right. Is that better?
So far, so good.
Okay. Not sure where it got cut off, but we partnered with Heart of Maine, United Way, to do a very public application process that aligned with city council established goals of childcare, homelessness, housing, job training, mental health, and substance use disorder. And then the United Way sort of mimicked internally what they do for their own grant application. They had a number of trained volunteers supported by Heart of Maine who reviewed everything. All of those recommendations came back to the city council. The city council reviewed all of the applications and then made a determination as to which particular applications they were going to fund. So that's kind of got us where to about 80% of the funding was awarded through that process. There is a request from an original award under that process to amend. You may recall we had a couple of other requests to amend existing agreements, one for Bangor Symphony Orchestra, and the other was for, good gracious, the second one, Habitat for Humanity. And we did make some amendments to those. The Christine B. Foundation had initially, their application was to fund site planning and design services associated with the creation of a medical nutrition health facility. In the last 24 months, as you can all imagine, and we have seen within our day-to-day work, facility construction costs have escalated greatly. Campaign costs are also escalating. We have a number of large asks going on. There continues to be significant demand for limited private and government resources. So the Christine B. Foundation would like to amend, has requested that the council consider amending their existing agreement in lieu of funding design and permitting costs associated with a new location, that we fund some expansion costs at their current location, which would allow them to actually add more as it relates to their medical nutrition health program that they offer, and they would assume additional space where they're currently located and do some food safety improvement and distribution maintenance. And I'm not sure if there's additional information that the council would like to consider, but it feels very much in line with the initial ask in a slightly different form.
Thanks. Let's pause there. Councilor Fournier?
So supply chain management, what is that?
I'm not sure if Matt is in the room or not, and I can certainly get you some more information.
And the other question I had was just program personnel. To me, we were all talking about capital improvements, and now
Yep.
those two things seem to be more operational.
Sure.
That's why I asked the question.
Matt, would you like to address those questions?
Yes, thank you. Apologies for not being there in person, but I'm glad technology is working. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes,
Roger.
thank you.
Great, thank you. So, Debbie, thank you for the explanation, and I'll address the couple questions so far with Councilor Fournier. The proposed changes would help us achieve the same goal that we submitted in our application to bring greater capacity to patients facing cancer and needing access to healthy food and nutrition information. The supply chain management is really the distribution arm to ensure that some of our other expenses, such as vehicle maintenance and doing that last mile drop for the greater capacity at our facility, can be fulfilled. So it's not just the facility space as well to achieve that wraparound care that many in this population really need. So the proposed change is to address the same goal with those three tiers, as opposed to the larger new development that was in the application.
Thank you.
I'm
Go
still,
ahead.
Yeah, that's what I said.
I'm
It
still
sounds like, but I
confused.
still don't understand what specifically the money is going to, and also the improvements to the property. This is now a rental property versus a property that we're gonna buy, and I agree with the FTE comments too.
So I'm still not understanding the program personnel.
If the personnel cost is not eligible, we certainly understand that. We're facing a remarkable uptick in requests to the tune of 50% this year compared to last, far beyond our capacity. So we proposed that. Certainly understand that if programming and ongoing costs is not eligible for this, we know that there's a need for investing in our current space to achieve the same goal. We're balancing the ongoing demand with the long-term vision of what was in our application, and we feel that this is a way to achieve the same goal in our current space in Bangor.
Thank you. Other questions or comments on this? Councilor Beck?
Well, just to clarify, it doesn't, so did we determine that these are in fact operating costs, or they're not operating costs that we're being asked to convert to?
Yeah,
So
to me,
Go ahead, excuse me.
to me, they seem like operating costs, but Matt, please tell us if we're incorrect on that.
So the current facility on Hancock Street is a rental. And what some of the expenses that we proposed for half of our award would go towards maintenance and securing the space for an additional 2 years for this existing program. And the other two proposed amendments, the personnel and supply chain management, I'm hearing that it's not a perfect alignment with ARPA requests, and can understand if the council is looking for more information or if it's just not an alignment.
Thank you.
So-
Councilor Fournier?
So if we can get more information, I think that would be very appropriate. Obviously, things are, we're ending the end of the year pretty quickly here. If we could get, I think the food safety improvement, that maybe that is a capital expense to keep the food appropriate. It's the distribution maintenance I have questions about, and obviously the program personnel I have questions about. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Councilor Mallor?
Well, having not been involved with the beginning of this, it's kind of difficult sometimes to ask questions, but I'm curious as to the expansion of rental space. How much is it a 50% increase, 100% increase? Matt?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we're hoping with this reallocation, we can have at least a 25% increase to our current space.
To be used for what?
To be used
Personnel?
for food storage, fulfillment, and processing to meet the growing demand for medically tailored grocery packages.
Councilor Fish?
Is there 25% or more space available? And has there been any encouragement that that lease would be possible?
Yes, Councilor Fish, thanks for that. There is space available in the current building, actually on the current floor as well. And it is an alternative that we're thinking is feasible in the short term as we have this immediate uptick in programming need, putting aside the new development project for a later point to find this opportunity in the same building we're in now is a little more feasible.
So it sounds like we have a request for some additional information on
Yep.
the food safety improvement and distribution maintenance.
Yep.
And then we can back to this one at a later date.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Now we're going to transition into sort of where our last conversation left off regarding obligations. I think we're all aware of the fact that the city is required to have fully obligated its federal awards by the end of the calendar year. And actually in August, the city council had actually obligated all of its funds. Another question that came up is, once you have obligated funds, is there any opportunity to unobligate, deobligate, or reobligate? And I will share that there are limited circumstances in which that can happen. So one of the easier examples is if you had a contractor in place to do a particular scope of work, and for some reason they were not able to complete that, then you could reobligate those funds to another contractor or by contracting with someone else to do, in essence, similar work. You can also reallocate funds between previously obligated projects. So for example, if you had obligated $100,000 for a particular piece of work, and the actual bid came in at, it only cost 80,000 to have it done, you could re-obligate that 20,000 to another obligation that needed some additional money. You can do that after December 31st of 2024. So there are limited circumstances. The Department of Treasury has really defined what an obligation means. It typically means that an order has been placed, that you have a contract, that you have a subaward or some other transaction that requires payment. As I said earlier, nearly 80% of your ARPA money was allocated through your very public application process. All of those have awards in place, with the one, obviously, that we're going to come back and revisit as it relates to the Christine B. Foundation. All of those have agreements in place. So those are all considered obligated. The balance of the funding, or about 20%, are projects that we've identified as government services. Every municipality or every recipient of ARPA funds was allowed to choose, if you will, a revenue loss amount, and you could automatically, by default, choose $10 million or less. The city did make that choice by the required deadline, and the required deadline was, I believe, April of 2022. So as long as we are investing the funds for something that meets the definition of governmental services, it is an eligible use. The council to date has obligated funds for 3 positions: a homeless response manager, a housing position, and a grant manager. We also had done some equipment. We did sidewalk plows, for example. We did public restrooms. And then since then, we've done quality housing provider programs and housing infrastructure. With the exception of the quality housing provider and the housing infrastructure, and if you may recall, and especially for those newer counselors, the city council had taken an action to obligate just over $2.5 million for what we referred to as housing infrastructure. That was mainly comprised of 2 pieces. We had said all along that we would fund the infrastructure associated with the development of the 10 acres on Grandview Avenue, knowing that housing is a priority, knowing that the sunk and upfront costs related to infrastructure and site acquisition were a major barrier to ensuring that we had affordable housing that was being constructed in our community, and really kind of focusing on that missing middle, that 80 to 120% of AMI, that the city council was supportive of dedicating $2 million there. The other $500,000 plus, what we do know is that we have a constriction in our current wastewater system. And that constriction is really within what's referred to as the Kmart pump station area and the Hogan Road area. There are a couple of large tracts of undeveloped, and clearly the Bangor Mall, I think many of us would argue, is underdeveloped areas that feed into that sewer system. And the pump station either needed to be replaced, but we also know that we don't have capacity in the piping that goes under the interstate. We had shared a while ago that we had a third party who was doing an investigation into both the Kmart and the Perry Road substation pump station areas. And we last week got a draft proposal as to how to fix our capacity issues in the area of Hogan Road. And that was sort of where we had identified an opportunity to make some infrastructure investments. The quality housing program provider, we did a similar allocation of federal funds, CDBG funds, related to the fact that there are times when there are necessary improvements needed to our housing stock. And is there a way to incentivize those and tie them to low to moderate income households? We can do with CDBG funds, but if we wanted to get at that missing middle, that we allocated some ARPA funds to do that as well. The form of those both took a council order. And the question was, would a council order suffice as an obligation? And after reviewing all of the regulations, I believe it's going to be in the city council's best interest to actually authorize MOUs for that work. So that's going to be part of our discussion as well. The Department of Treasury was actually pretty clear that in authorizing a memorandum of understanding between departments, even within the same agency, will be viewed and accepted as an obligation under the final ARPA rules. And I appear to have skipped around a little bit, and I apologize for that. So we have that as part of the MOU, and an update, I should say, on some existing ARPA awards that are part of that 80%. Wellspring has come forward and said they are unable to complete their project for which they are awarded ARPA funds. So I believe those monies are available for reallocation. We also partnered with Penobscot County on the generator replacement at the nursing home. That cost actually came in less, so there is a small balance of funds to consider reallocating there. Health Equity Alliance has temporarily paused operations as an organization. This resulted in the closure of the Heart Center. We do get updates from the organization Leadership Wednesday, every Friday, I should say. And last Friday afternoon, the update I got is at this point, they do not believe they'll be able to reopen the Heart Center safely until at least January. So we had advanced 3/4 of the money. I am waiting for a final accounting of the money from their accounting firm so that I understand how much is left. So I would suggest we consider reallocating that 4th quarter payment as well as any other unutilized fund from the Heart Center. I recognize that this continues to be a priority for the council, and I would say that we have, if there is a sustainable plan, that we could come back and utilize ARPA interest earnings if the council so chooses. Do you want me to stop there? It's hard to tell, not in the room. I apologize. Or would you like me to go to the next part of the recommendation?
I'm just looking to see, yeah, Counselor Houser.
I was reading through the rest of this, and I really firmly believe that we have to put money into the infrastructure improvements. That is not going to sustain much more development out there than it already has, and we've heard this multiple times from the infrastructure committee, from other people that we're going to check around. And City Manager Lori, I'd also like to see that the proposal or the plan that the person did for you for the up in that area as well as Perry Road. And if we could get local people, just where we stand citywide with what does our infrastructure really look like? Because there's other places that I believe could use some help. That also could be prime development areas in the future. So we have not done infrastructure work for a very long time. And this might be a good time to start looking at some sort of a plan to do a bit of this and a bit of that, but definitely the Hogan Road has got to get fixed. So could we have that information maybe at the infrastructure committee?
Yes, they had that draft report just last week, was
Okay.
received by staff. So they are coming forward. I can tell you the not so pleasant news is the Kmart pump station is $4.8 million. And that's really to upsize the pipe underneath the interstate because, and by installing a gravity feed system on the upper end, and we could actually eliminate a pump station. But really, you can still replace the pump station, but we're going to have capacity restrictions based on the line size underneath the interstate. But yes, that will come to the infrastructure committee in December to give you an update on those two planning efforts.
Well, that will at least give us something to start from and go from there, but I think there's other areas we'll want to look at as well. Thank you.
I don't see any other hands. If you'd like to continue.
Okay, so earlier last week, we were actually contacted by representatives of a couple of groups that are working with the residents of the Cedar Falls Mobile Home Park. I believe you have all seen that the residents have banded together, have submitted an offer to purchase their mobile home park in lieu of it being sold to a third party. So it was a good opportunity to get sort of those who are working to assist this group in the same room. We did learn that the group has lined up both a senior and a junior lender, and they were in the process of doing a site evaluation with their professional engineers. Obviously, any part of being successful in a resident purchase does require an equity investment, i.e. the owners have to put in a down payment, if you will. So for example, you may recall there was just a recent successful resident purchase of a mobile home park in Brunswick. And the equity, part of the equity portion of that, I'm not sure if it was all of the equity portion, it was a combination of funding. The town of Brunswick provided $800,000, I believe, and then a certain amount of money came from the state's recently created Mobile Home Preservation Fund. So in talking with the group, they did feel that they would be able to tap the state's fund for a significant portion of the equity. And so what we kind of talked about with them is, would the city be able to identify $500,000 for council consideration? So late last week we worked, and we think we could reprogram some and reassign some federal CDBG dollars and the amount of about $380,000 towards that. And then our recommendation is that we would consider allocating $120,000 of the $250,000 that was put aside for the quality housing provider funding. I think ensuring that we maintain quality affordable housing that exists in our community as is very similar as investing in providing quality housing within our community. There were two other ARPA awards that at times the council had expressed concern about whether or not they would meet the timeline. The two projects are Together Place Housing, where the council had allocated $375,000 to purchase a multi-unit building to provide housing opportunities for up to 10 individuals. And the Heart of Maine, which was $400,000 for the creation of a community. That was a nonprofit hub to fill important gaps and I'm back. The Together Place Housing was $375,000. There was a concern as to whether or not they would be able to find an actual unit in this current market to be able to complete that purchase. And the Heart of Maine United Way was $400,000 to create their community and nonprofit hub. Both organizations are continuing to diligently work to identify locations to fulfill this, but I know in the past some councils have expressed concern. I would suggest that if you continue to have that concern, we could consider carrying those projects forward with the use of interest earnings, and that we consider reobligating any of the federal awards made, reobligating those to go towards those infrastructure costs that we just talked about. The city is not required to expend the interest earnings on an ARPA eligible project. The city could do whatever it likes, but the council had been very clear that they felt that to maintain the integrity of the project, that they would like to use those funds in a similar manner. So if you add up all of the reallocations to use interest earnings, you may think, oh, it's more than what we have on hand, but we continue to earn interest. So I do believe we'd fully be able to fund whatever the Heart Center may or may not look like post January 1. as well as the Together Place Housing and the United Way, should both of those options come to fruition. And this would free up, about another, let's see, million or so dollars, $1.2 million maybe, that we could put towards our infrastructure costs, especially in the area of Hogan Road and Kmart.
Thank you. Discussion, Counselor Fish.
If, we give them an extension with the hope that, their projects can continue, would there be a time frame? How would we know how long we should wait? And even though it's, it's, the money would go back into infrastructure and we take the money out of the interest earnings, it's still money that we're setting aside and allocating one way or the other, whether it's from, the left or the right, it's still, the monies are gonna be needed for those projects. So how would we put some limitations or some time limits so that we just have a better idea of, when those projects, when we know that it's dead or moving forward?
Yeah. I would say that the council has every right to put a time limit on it. And I can say, if you wanted to say that if you don't do it within, we could actually say every 6 months you have to come and provide us with an update, and the council can decide at which point they no longer want to continue to pursue this option.
Seems to me that a reasonable timeframe would be the initial end of the award. So getting updates every 6 months, and if they have not, shown progress in moving forward by December 31st, 2026, which was when they were initially scheduled to spend the money, that we would essentially cancel the award and decide to use those monies for other purposes. That's just a suggestion. Councilor Fournier.
I think this is a good compromise, for the two organizations that everyone was, pretty much in support of. I don't know if everyone was, but, to help them keep the ball moving from their end. It was always the council's intent, to use the interest money towards these programs. So I think that's a good suggestion from staff. Thank you.
Yes, Councilor Dean.
We're talking about infrastructure, which obviously is quite important. And I just wanted to bring up one point. Randall Park is opening December 1st. And they had originally hoped to be at about $800 a month. They're at $1,300 because of considerable infrastructure costs. Is it possible that we could allocate a small amount to Randall Park for a percentage of perhaps some lower income units? If we were agreeable, since it is an existing form of housing right now, rather than looking to the future and, how long will it be before we have another development? Or something similar to that. Can we do something with existing housing to make it more affordable?
Councilor Fournier.
I'm sorry, I'm lost on Randall Park. What's Randall Park?
That's the tiny home community.
Oh.
I believe it's Randall Park.
So they're short on funds?
Not short on funds, but their original intention was to rent out at $800 a unit. But because of the exorbitant infrastructure cost, they're renting at $1,300, which is not really affordable any longer. It's not high cost, but it's not exactly where they want it to be. So I didn't know if, something could be done to have a percentage of the park for lower income housing.
Councilor Leonard.
If I may respond to that. So one of the original reasons why the tiny home park, because they put it in our application for, I think it was like $2 million, something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was personally open to having that discussion, to seeing, hey, is there a way that we can give funding to this program to sort of have a deal for having much lower rents? I was open to that, but the council at the time already made a clear vote, a decisive vote, that we were not going to consider that. And part of the reason why was similar to why what was it? Was it a Northern Light that had a generator that it was trying to
Thank you.
just I don't think it was the generator. It was something else. The issue with the proposal and former Councilor Sprague made a really good point on this, which was the project was already outlined to be completed with the funds that they already had. The idea of us giving funds originally at the time of ARPA was to give funds for projects that did not have a clear site. That project did, and so the majority of councilors decided that that was not a good use of funds, and I thought that was actually reasonable to make that statement. But if we want to have that discussion, I'm open to having that discussion, but I think we already closed the door on this unless someone else wants to continue this conversation.
And my thought about it wasn't just for Randall Park, but just for, we have existing housing that people can't afford. Is there something we can do with some of this money so people can afford housing now? Because anything out by the mall is gonna be years in the making. So that's my only thought on this.
Other discussion? Counselor Beck?
So under the additional considerations, when we're talking about Together Place Housing and Heart of Maine United Way. I guess what I'm hearing is, so we're talking about basically doing like a little bit of a shell game here of, we're gonna use the, we can't take the money back, we're gonna obligate it for infrastructure. And then we'll just hold on to this interest money as kind of an insurance policy of, hey, if they do finally come through with this plan, then we'll have that money that we can use for it. My problem with that, though, is that, you know, there's a number of things we can discuss about this interest money, and I feel like it just takes it right off the table. And I'm not prepared to do that. I guess what I'm looking for is a recommendation from staff. I mean, how confident are we? Are they going to meet this obligation? Either they are or they aren't. You know, did we promise them until 2026? And if that's the case, then that's what we stick with. Thank you.
Counselor Leonard?
Just a quick point on Councilor Beck's point regarding interest money. I get that there were some councilors at the time that wanted to use interest money specifically in the same guise with ARPA, but we don't have to do that. And we do have 2 new councilors on this council where we can make a full discussion on what we want to use that interest money for, because the sky's the limit basically for what we can do. I would much rather have a more open discussion of all possibilities rather than sticking to what we have here, because that is very flexible money that we can use. So I'm not saying that using those funds for the things that we've already considered are bad options. I'm just saying that I don't think it would be appropriate for us to have tunnel vision just because we've already expressed that we were going to use ARPA funds for these projects before in the past. I think it would be a misstep if we didn't take a full consideration on other items. I just wanted to put that out for the record.
So it seems to me there are a few options here. One is continue with the grants for Together Place and Heart of Maine United Way, realizing that we may lose that money at some point. Another is to choose to decline or re-obligate those funds and just say no to Together Place and Heart of Maine because they aren't going to meet the December 31st deadline. And the third option is to hold those savings for a certain amount of time for Together Place and Heart of Maine United Way, and re-obligate the funds for infrastructure. So I guess I'm willing to take a motion on one of those.
Kind of sounds like we're a bit divided in the opinion of where each person wants to fall into those, so.
Counselor Fournier.
Maybe we give a hard line for both, Heart of Maine and, Together Place, that they're to nail something down within a year. And if they can't do that, then that money would come back to council to decide where it all goes. But so I'd be in favor of option 3, that we use the money that was allocated for those two goes to infrastructure. And the interest money that we've earned stays in a safe place until for 1 year, until Heart of Maine and Together Place can present us with a proposal.
Second,
Yeah,
There's a motion and a second. Additional discussion.
I would be more in favor of that than putting it aside for 2 years, because I think we heard the date of December 2026. But a year, I think, gives them a fair opportunity where we already had obligated the opera funds, and just putting it aside for a year. You know, they've had this much time, hopefully a year, give them the opportunity. So I would be in favor of that. I think that's a good compromise.
Counselor Dean?
Would it behoove us financially if that year was our year end rather than a year from today?
So December 31st, 2025? Because our financial year is July.
Right. Rather than a year, would it be better just to have it done in this current fiscal year?
Counselor
They've
Fournier?
already had a year to do this. They haven't been able to do it. So we're just kicking it down the road another year for them to do it. I think that's.
I'm actually shortening it. If we,
Right.
Oh, you're going to
Same.
6:30?
Yeah,
Yeah.
June 30th.
I mean, do we want to bring this into another fiscal year and another budget, and does that have any concerns?
Counselor Trumbull?
I mean, I think that's reasonable. At that point, you just know if they make progress. They still don't have to have the project completed, but by next June, if no progress, that's over 7 months from now. If no progress has been made by then. I think we got a pretty good idea.
Counselor Leonard?
I am not really comfortable leaving this meeting saying that we have a use for these interest monies right now. I think it would be more appropriate to have another meeting regarding the use of these funds. And I'm more than happy to do it before the end of the year, but I think it's a bit hasty to put together a plan for very flexible monies right now. So at this point, I'm just not in favor. Not to say that's not a good plan, but I think it's a bit hasty right now. And I think we could, at the very least, have one more meeting to discuss these interest monies. So I'm not in favor of making any solid decision tonight on the interest monies.
So again, we have a motion and a second on. Go ahead.
So can I amend my motion?
June 30.
Yeah, we'll
I
go
would
June
second
30,
that.
and you second that.
To June 30th. Okay, so the motion is to reallocate the funds to infrastructure and put a hold on the interest earnings for Together Place and United Way until June 30th. So we have a motion and a second. We'll do a vote. Counselor Leonard?
I'm sorry, can we go over the motion again? Does this involve interest monies in this decision right now?
It
Right.
does.
So
Okay,
the interest-
all right, so no, I'm gonna give me a no on this.
Okay, Counselor Beck?
No.
Counselor Trumbull?
Yes.
Counselor Mallard?
No,
Counselor Hawes?
No.
Okay, Counselor Fish?
Yes.
Counselor Dean?
Yes.
Counselor
Yeah.
Fournier? And I'm a yes. I think it's 5-4.
Just so I understand, the interest money would be secured and put aside only until June 30th.
Correct. That was the motion on the table. Counselor Trumbull?
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
that would be, so
Okay.
it could be spent They might, I mean, I think they have to know what they're doing by June
Right.
30th. They don't have to spend it by June 30th, right?
City Manager Lori, was that
Yep.
direction or?
Yes.
additional You need us to consider.
Nope, and I think that gave me the direction I needed, so what I will do is I will, based on that, I will create council orders noting that amendment for Heart of Maine United Way, Together Place Housing, as well as Heal that we had talked about, and further, I will bring forward memorandums of understanding to reallocate funds, the federal funds, to infrastructure and to the housing infrastructure at Grandview Avenue.
Thank you.
Unless you'd
Anything-
like, yeah, no,
If there's nothing else on ARPA, we can move on to city manager updates.
all right. So city manager updates. So I just wanted to kind of make sure that folks are aware. Councilor Fish earlier today let me know that she will have a conflict under first readings and referrals. Councilor Fish, at that point, when the city clerk introduces first readings and referrals, you should at that point raise your conflict. Your fellow councilors will vote. And if found to be in conflict, even though it's just a referral, you may likely be asked to leave the room at that point. There is an update on our holiday parade route in case you have not seen it. Historically, it had gone sort of down around Central Street, all the way along Main Street, and disbanded sort of down along the waterfront. We were having some traffic and safety concerns. There was a lot of conflict with traffic, pedestrians, and parades. So they've actually updated their parade route this year. It's actually going to start on State and Exchange. It'll turn left onto State Street. When it enters the interchange with Hammond, Main, and State, it will continue down Main. It will go down Water, and then it will make a left onto Washington. So it will disband on Exchange. So in essence, it will now disband in many ways where it starts. So hopefully that will provide a great improvement in the safety of that. And I'm looking for my LPC list. So last week, the Legislative Policy Committee met. And they have drafted sort of their final platform that will be coming forward. There were a number of items. There is not much movement on the state funding for special education. They are going to make some requested, this was actually the Maine Educational Association was going to submit legislation to treat non-minimum receivers the same as minimum receivers on the state aid education. So that wouldn't do too much for the city. On the flip side, the Maine Education Association is, my understanding, going to ask that the school construction funding, which is about $150 million a year, actually be funded separate from the 55% aid to education level. So that's going to be $150 million ask from the MEA, which would result in additional funding to local education. There is the perennial favorite of getting general assistance reimbursement up to 90%, as well as providing a $10 per application admin fee, because there are no admin costs paid to any municipality who processes general assistance. Under the criminal justice and public safety, there's going to be an ask from MMA to increase the state funding for county jails. I think for those of us who work locally, we understand that the cost of local jails is actually borne by our taxpayers. And the artificial limit, I believe it's about $20 million a year that's assigned to jail funding across the state. And we all know that there are a number of costs that are escalating drastically that are not getting picked up in that. There's also going to be an ask to consider an alternate day training for the Maine Justice Academy. You've heard a lot about this as an overnight program and about how there are only X many number of slots available. So there's going to be a request to do some study on that, as well as a request to allow for ambulance services such as what the city operates to bill for non-transport and paramedicine programs. We know that our employees respond to a number of calls that we cannot bill for. Even if this were to pass, you may not be able to bill for them all, but it would allow us to bill under main care. And that expansion of an eligible service is the first step to asking for consideration at the federal level as well. And then I think the top priority for the LPC, and I'm guessing the top priority for the council, is property tax relief. I think we have all heard from the residents about the property taxes and the burden that it's placing. So they're going to look at sort of trying to combine a number of items, such as doubling the homestead exemption, protecting the revenue sharing as well, because for folks who don't realize, the city receives a certain percentage of the broad-based taxes that are generated by the state of Maine on a monthly basis. And that they're going to ask that all of the exemptions, property tax exemptions that are authorized by state statute are actually reimbursed to the city at a rate of 90%. It's a pretty big ask. So we're going to hope for some great movement to help our property taxpayers here in Bangor in the coming session. And I believe those are all my notes that I had.
Councilor Fournier.
So are we gonna have the county come in and talk to us about the jail? And what
We
the
can start.
effects-
Yeah, we can certainly do that. I know that they are working their way through their jail. They've been very public that they are looking for new space for their jail. But I think it would also be good. I believe the county budget process just wrapped up last week, if I recall correctly, Council Chair Pelletier and Councilor Trumbull. And there is a pretty substantial deficit. So it might be a good opportunity to bring them in and have that conversation.
I think that would be great. The only other comment I had, it doesn't have to do with updates, was under unfinished business, the one I'm doing, ordinance 24-318. I always get confused on these. The planning board voted ought not to pass. So if we vote yes, that means we're supporting the planning board?
No, if you vote yes, you are supporting the zone change request.
You need 6 votes, right?
And you would need 6 votes because you have to, if you are going to overturn a planning board recommendation, it's by a 2/3 majority.
All right, thank you. I just wanted that out there.
I did think of one other thing too. I know in the last couple of meetings, you've had some public comment about fluoride. So, and I know Councilor Dean was looking for some information, especially based on her daytime job. I will share with you that I connected with both of the individuals who had inquired about that and connected them to the Water District Board meeting, as that is the appropriate forum.
Thank you. Other questions for the city manager? Okay. Seeing none, we'll entertain a motion.
For executive session.
Mhm.
I move we go into executive session 1 MRSA section 4056E. And executive session 1 MRSA 4056A. One is consultation with city solicitor. And the last one is personnel matter.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Counselor Leonard.
Yes.
Counselor Beth.
Yes.
Counselor Trumbull.
Yes.
Counselor Miller.
Yes.
Counselor Hall.
Yes.
Counselor Fish.
Yes.
Counselor Dean.
Yes.
Counselor Fournier.
No.
I'm a yes. Got 8 to 1. So we're in executive session whether you like it or